I have to say, Dave, I think all the changes, pretty much every change that has been made, I would very much agree with. If I'd been given a magic wand, I would and was asked to deal with the races they've dealt with, I would have done very, very similar things. The novice chase program has been a massive point of contention for a long time. Three grade ones and a grade two just seemed far too many. Thankfully, those with the power to change agreed, and we're now down to two grade ones. One at 2 miles, one at just over 3 miles, and I think that's perfect. That's all we need: a short option, a long option. Dave, everyone is going to know with a great amount of certainty from the time these horses come out and make winning chasing debuts. We're going to have a very good idea of what race they're likely to end up in. That's brilliant for promotion. That's brilliant for building expectation, and it's brilliant for the end product, which will hopefully be a funneled, distilled version of the novice chase division in those two grade ones. Couldn't be happier with that set of changes. And we're going to have two what will be fiercely competitive novices handicaps in the places of the races that have been expunged or converted, or whatever way you want to phrase that. Last March, we had the highest percentage of odds-on favourites that we've ever had at the meeting. After many years of 5, 6, 7 odds-on favs, it's just not what a championship meeting should be. It was my view, and I think the view of many, not everyone. Of course, there's another side to the argument, but I think last March, the issues really were exposed to all. It came off the back of quite an uninspiring season. Some of our equine stars were ruled out at the meeting, and I didn't feel the vibe was great going in. And then, of course, the meeting itself, I was there all 4 days. I've never felt the Cheltenham Festival as flat in my life. If we spend the whole season building towards this end result, and we get there, and we're greeted with the best novices being chopped up amongst multiple options. We're greeted with, Lossiemouth running in the Mayor's Hurdle rather than taking on Stateman. And we see all the action play out on the track, and the fan base are being told, well, it might have been nice to see Corbett's Cross and Factifile take each other on, or Lossiemouth or Stateman. But sure, look, maybe we'll get to see it next year. I don't think that's where we want to be as a sporting and betting product. And look, plenty of the changes that have been made here will result in less of that. But I know the discussion will, I suppose, be dominated, Dave, by the changes that have been made. I would have plenty of comment on the changes that weren't made as well. Because to me, there were two big areas here that really demanded attention that have been left largely untouched. The first one is the novice hurdle program. To me, how the group of people involved here can look at the novice chase program as they did and rightfully conclude that 3 grade ones and a grade two is too much and take an axe to that. But then look at the novice hurdle program, which is 3 grade ones, a Mayor's grade two novice, and the Triumph, which technically isn't a novice but is contested, primarily by novices. How they can look at that and say that's perfectly fine, we're going to leave that alone, bar a tiny change to the Mayor's novice. That doesn't stack up to me. I think we're going to have the same sort of issues with the novice hurdle program ongoing that we've had in it, as well as the novice chase program. In that, the Supreme and the mid-range race, the Gallaghers, as it's now known. I assume it will be known as that next year. You never know. They're too interchangeable. They're too interchangeable, and the most powerful trainers can afford to wait until late and split the races and move around their options as best they can, which they're fully entitled to do. Everyone understands why they do, but the changes they've made to the novice chase program mean that it severely reduces the opportunity for ducking and diving, but that opportunity still remains in the novice hurdles. So that is one area that I'm a little bit disappointed that they didn't tackle as well as they tackled the novice chases. And the other one, which you've mentioned a number of times this morning, is the Mayor's race program. That'll be the most controversial point in terms of things that weren't done, because as we know, the Mayor's Hurdle, to a lesser extent the Mayor's Chase, has caused all sorts of ire over the years. The Mayor's Hurdle, a great example of it this year, of course, as alluded to earlier. We lost Constitution Hill from the Champion Hurdle. The most captivating opponent for Stateman was Lossiemouth. But it was never on the table. Her connection said she's eligible for the Mayor's Hurdle. She's going there. Again, as they're fully entitled to do. But that was just a real head in hands moment that, to me, flattened the whole of day one of the Cheltenham Festival, rather than seeing a clash between an established top performer in Stateman and an unknown, who knows where the ceiling is, contender in Lossiemouth. we had the two of them rock up at separate races, go off at odds on, win largely uneventful races. And again, we were told, well, we might get to see it next year. That's unsatisfactory to me.
I think they're broadly really very good changes. I think, like all of these things, that everything needs to be looked at every now and again, and enough sort of heads get together, and hopefully the right sort of course of action comes out. And I think these changes are significant, and I think they are very beneficial to the sport.
And it's the intention, of course, and the phrase that's used throughout the sort of presentation of all this by Cheltenham is the best versus the best. Do you see that some of these moves are a step in that direction in terms of encouraging people to pit their better horses against other people's best horses?
Yeah, I suppose if you ask the trainer's point of view, they want to put the best horse in the worst race and win the most amount of prize money as they can. So I suppose you'll talk to some people and they'll probably disagree with them, and you'll talk to others and they'll probably agree with them. So, but I think for the greater good of the sport and the greater good of Cheltenham, I think these are beneficial.
OK, let's talk about the mares specifically, because one change that has been made is to the mares novice hurdle, which you won with You Wear It Well a couple of years ago. She would have been carrying the penalty, wouldn't she? But they're doing away with the penalty, perhaps to encourage people to race prior to that race, I guess, and not fear going in penalised. Is that the thinking, do you think?
Yeah, that's right. It's obviously a Grade 2, so the penalties for Grade 2s are very different to the lack of penalties in Grade 1s. And I was all in favour of it actually being a Grade 1 as opposed to a Grade 2 with no penalties. But it didn't make sense to carry penalties in this race. We got a penalty from winning a Grade 2 at Sandown on our previous start, and the Cheltenham races, the conditions races, the best horse should be winning, and the best horse shouldn't be penalised carrying a penalty. We were lucky that we won it under a penalty, but certainly this year I know Fergal O'Brien and Dysart Enos sort of went about trying not to carry that penalty. They ended up not running at the race, and it was probably it didn't help them in the longer term, did it? But I think it makes sense to get rid of that penalty for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be sort of pushing for it to be a Grade 1.
The cross-country chase to a handicap. I've seen a note that you gave to our producer Rob Lee saying no brainer.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great idea. I think, yes, okay, if you feel a horse isn't up to running in a race like the Gold Cup anymore, or even the Ryanair chase, if you're willing to make the step up in trip, but give the other horses a chance. Very often we see those races in December and November, really competitive races. And very often those so-called good things don't win because they're giving a lot of weight away to other horses. I think it's a great idea. It'll make it really competitive. I think it'll condense the betting a little bit more as well. And it'll give quite a few horses a chance to win against the big boys.
Well, you talk about betting, Mick. I mean, of course, let's talk also, if you don't mind, about the increase of prior experience requirements to run in the handicaps, of course. Last year, they made it 4 runs for a novice over hurdles. They've increased that to 5, and now they've looked at the chase population as well. They've looked at the competitive nature of that. You almost thinking, Fitzy, that perhaps the chases should have gone first because they're the bigger obstacles as well, more experience. I think we can get behind that. 5 runs, though, Mick, for a novice hurdler. Does that discourage them from running in the handicaps? Remember Xenophon, all that sort of stuff? You've ridden the good plot jobs. There's no more of them anymore.
Well, I think they're basically trying to stop people running, the likes of State Man in a race like the County Hurdle, because, you get a horse like him, you don't actually know how good they are because you haven't seen enough of them. But if they have to have run a few more times, there's less chance of them getting underneath the radar. Look, there'll be plenty of people who will have to show their hand a little bit better. But at the same time, it's the Cheltenham Festival. You have it like this. You're trying to have a fair playing field for everyone. And, yeah, I think it'll make it difficult because horses are not machines. Some of them don't take that many runs. So it probably means that you might see a few horses who will have to go down the non-handicap route.